What's up guys, I'm Josh Brown with Pinnacle Point Studios, producer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Avantone CV-12BLA. It's an awesome microphone and it's modded. So we got today is this beautiful Avantone CV-12BLA modded. We got the Avantone Pro Shield, which is actually recommended for this microphone. I'm gonna just start with the things that I like about it. There's not a lot of things that I don't like about it, so this is gonna be a pretty easy thing to do. The negative 10 decibel pad, and I know this is a pretty frequent thing and a pretty common thing that a lot of microphones have, but an interesting thing about this pad is that it doesn't really affect the outcome of how powerful your vocals are. I know I have a little Audio-Technica something mic over there, and I use that. When you put that negative 12 pad on, what happens a lot of the time is you end up losing, I don't know, some sort of quality or fidelity within that recording. And the nice thing about this pad is you're almost maintaining that entire volume, you're maintaining that entire clarity, but you're not losing anything. You're not losing any integrity of your audio. Another thing I like about it is the low cut. The low cut isn't something that I personally use a lot because my voice isn't that low. So, but it's still a very useful feature. I did experiment with it a little bit, and I find it to be very useful, mainly because when you're doing those vocal tracks where maybe you don't even have a lower register, but you're saying a lot of words that have a lower tone, you know, or you're saying a lot of words that maybe have not a lot of sibilance or not a lot of plosive. I feel like if you're saying a word that doesn't have sibilance, it's going to feel like it's lower in tone most of the time, just because you're not saying this and you don't have that high end. And so something I love about this low cut is that it almost solves that problem without taking out too much of the low end. There's still a little bit of work to be done on the back end once you get through that recording. But those are the big things that stood out for me. Another thing that I love about it is the ease to set up. One thing that I know is that you do have to let it warm up. And this is just a personal preference, but this is impossible. I would love it if you could just plug it in and it was ready to go, but that's not realistic with these little tube amps. And so with the tube amp, basically what that does, in my opinion, is it just gives you a way warmer sound. And the amount of different polar patterns that you have to control on the little device over here are just, and I don't expect you to see this, but this is just for a reference for me. There's 9 different polar patterns that you can choose between. The first polar pattern, the 5th polar pattern, and the 10th polar pattern are my favorite ones, and I haven't messed around with a lot of the ones in between, but those are just my favorite polar patterns. For my voice, I feel like I have a warmer, a little bit more high-ended voice when it comes to recording, and those polar patterns are absolutely great for that. Haven't tested out any instruments on this yet, although I'd be very interested to do so. Now that we've talked about all the awesome things about this microphone, let's have a look at the things that maybe I'd like to change. Okay, there's 2 things basically that I would change about this microphone. One is the length. I'm not sure if that's something that's feasible, like possible with microphones, but, or maybe if they could design it in a way where it would sit a little bit lower on the actual shock mount, which this shock mount is amazing, by the way. This shock mount is designed specifically for this microphone. I mean, you could, I'm not going to bat it around, but you could bat it around in theory, I believe, and it would stay straight. But the only reason I'm saying that is because I know a lot of producers spend a lot of their time sitting in a chair. And if you're a producer and a singer-songwriter, it's very realistic that you're not going to have the opportunity to have somebody there to hit your play, pause, record for you. So you might want to record sitting down. And a lot of mic stands at their base height are this exact same height. A lot of desk stands are going to be the same height. And if I were to put this on a desk stand, the actual aperture for this little microphone, I don't know if that's what it's called, would be a little bit too high for something that I would like to do. So it'd be nice if we could see some more possibilities in terms of physical setup, how we can lay this up. The only thing other than that I would have to say that I would like to change is maybe the actual shock mount itself, maybe just squeeze that in a little bit, because it seems a little bit bulky right now for me. Very 100% effective. Awesome shock mount. I don't have any fears about my microphone going anywhere with this thing, but I do feel like it could be a little bit more streamlined, because it's even with their recommended Avantone Pro Shield, this is what we got here. It feels a little bit stressed to wrap it all around, although it is still very effective and it works great. It just feels a little bit stressed. But those are basically the main points that I wanted to address with this Avantone microphone. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you guys about is why I like using the microphone. I know we went over kind of some of the positives and some of the negatives, what I think the positives and the negatives are. But now I want to talk about why I like using the microphone and not just maybe the technical aspects of it. One thing that I'd like to say about this microphone is if you mix your own stuff, or if you have a mastering house that you send your stuff off to, you will have complete confidence in knowing that you're not sending them a huge workload with this microphone. You're not sending them an audio track that's going to have a bunch of your little extra stuff that we hear as human beings in there. It's not going to have a bunch of different stuff from the room unless you've set your polar pattern to want to get that stuff. But if it's just a vocal track, I think that this mic is probably going to be one of my favorites because of how warm it is and how clean it is. Another reason why I like using it, and this maybe might not be a positive or a negative, is just that it sounds, and I know a lot of microphones maybe have this quality, but I really feel like this quality is more intense with this one. This microphone sounds like what you would expect your voice to sound in a digital audio workstation. I know a lot of times you get a new microphone, you sing through it, and it kind of takes your ear a while to adjust to that new sound because you're switching from a different microphone. This, you kind of bypass that time of adjustment because it's such a natural, clean sound, and the tube adds enough warmth to where any of the little things that might sound different from your last microphone are now not only inconsequential, but they're not things that you're going to hear anymore, which is something that I think is awesome, and I've only really found with this microphone. Another thing that I really like about this microphone, guys, is that they redid the power supply. And the power supply before was awesome. Awesome power supply. But this one is way more reliable. And I don't design these kind of things, so I can't tell you why it's more reliable. I just know from my experience, it is more reliable. There's less things going wrong. You have to reset it. I've never had to reset this thing ever. The polar pattern switch is amazing. I love it. It's nice and smooth. Doesn't stick anywhere. Microphone in and outs are super solid. I don't know if that has any difference from the last one. But if I had to recommend what microphone to get and you were starting out as a musician, I get that something like this might be a little bit out of your budget, but it's worth budgeting to try and get something like this. There are other options out there, but this is not only going to set you ahead in terms of your capability and what you're able to do in the studio, but it's also going to change your mental attitude because you're going to be hearing yourself better. You're going to be getting a better response immediately back to your ears from this microphone, which when you think about what humans love, like why do we love music? We love music because it's immediately satisfying. It's immediately gratifying. We hear something and we feel something. And this microphone almost allows you to get that experience while you're recording. You don't really have to wait to hear all the effects. You're hearing it and you're feeling it. Even though you're the writer, you're feeling it in the way that it's going to be interpreted by the people listening to your music. I love this mic. Don't have anything bad to say about it. Long story short, for my Reddit people, TLDR, this is a great microphone and you need to do whatever you can to get your hands on one. Cheers. Cheers.